U.S. President number 1, George Washington. Meet George Washington, the first President of the United States, born on February 22, 1732, in Wakefield, Virginia. Washington was a surveyor, planter, and military leader. He served as president from 1789 to 1797, setting the standard for future leaders. U.S. President number 2, John Adams. Next up is John Adams, the second President of the United States. Born on October 30, 1735 in Quincy, Massachusetts, Adams was a teacher, lawyer, and diplomat. He served as president from 1797 to 1801, navigating the country through a tumultuous period. U.S. President number 3, Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, was born on April 13, 1743 in Shadwell, Virginia. A lawyer and statesman, Jefferson served as president from 1801 to 1809, overseeing the Louisiana Purchase and doubling the size of the country, and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence of 1776. U.S. President number 4, James Madison. James Madison, the fourth President of the United States, was born on March 16, 1751 in Port Conway, Virginia. A lawyer and politician, Madison served as president from 1809 to 1817, leading the country through the War of 1812. President number 5, James Monroe. James Monroe, the fifth President of the United States, was born on April 28, 1758, in West Monroe County, Virginia. A lawyer and diplomat, Monroe served as president from 1817 to 1825, issuing the Monroe Doctrine and asserting American influence abroad, and he was the last president from the Founding Fathers. U.S. President number 6, James Quincy Adams. James Quincy Adams, the sixth President of the United States, was born on July 11, 1767, in Quincy, Massachusetts. A lawyer and diplomat, Adams served as president from 1825 to 1829, advocating for infrastructure development and education. U.S. President number 7, Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, the seventh President of the United States, was born on March 15, 1767 in Waxhaw, South Carolina. A lawyer and military leader, Jackson served as president from 1829 to 1837, expanding democracy and vetoing the recharter of the Second Bank of the United States. U.S. President number 8, Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren, the eighth President of the United States, was born on December 5, 1782 in Kinderhook, New York. A lawyer and politician, Van Buren served as president from 1837 to 1841, navigating the country through economic turmoil. U.S. President number 9, William Henry Harrison. William Henry Harrison, the ninth President of the United States, was born on February 9, 1773 in Berkeley, Virginia. A soldier and politician, Harrison served as president for just 1 month in 1841, becoming the first president to die in office. U.S. President number 10, John Taylor. John Taylor, the 10th President of the United States, was born on March 29, 1790 in Greenway, Virginia. He was the first vice president to succeed the presidency after the death of his predecessor. A lawyer and politician, Taylor served as president from 1841 to 1845, annexing the Republic of Texas and expanding American territory. U.S. President number 11, James K. Polk. James K. Polk was the 11th President of the United States, serving from 1845 to 1849. He is often regarded as one of the most effective presidents in U.S. history. During his presidency, Polk oversaw the Mexican-American War, which resulted in the United States gaining a significant amount of land, including California. He also successfully negotiated the Oregon Treaty, establishing the 49th parallel as the border between the U.S. and Canada. Polk retired after one term on June 15, 1849, less than 4 months after leaving office. The former president succumbed to cholera outbreak in Nashville. U.S. President number 12, Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor was the 12th President of the United States, serving from 1849 to 1850. He was a war hero and politician who died just 16 months into his term. Taylor's presidency was marked by his strong stance against the expansion of slavery, which put him at odds with many in the South. Despite his short time in office, Taylor's leadership during the Mexican-American War and his commitment to preserving the Union have earned him a lasting place in American history. U.S. President number 13, Millard Fillmore. Millard Fillmore was the 13th President of the United States, serving from 1850 to 1853. He is often regarded as one of the most forgettable presidents in U.S. history. However, during his presidency, Fillmore signed the Compromise of 1850, which attempted to address slavery issues by admitting California as a free state and strengthening the Fugitive Slave Act. While the compromise ultimately failed to prevent the Civil War, it remains an important part of Fillmore's legacy. U.S. President number 14, Franklin Pierce. Franklin Pierce was the 14th President of the United States, serving from 1853 to 1857. His presidency was marked by the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which allowed new states to decide on slavery. This decision ultimately led to pro-slavery and anti-slavery violence in Kansas, earning it the nickname Bleeding Kansas. Despite his efforts to find a compromise, Pierce's presidency was ultimately defined by the growing tensions leading up to the Civil War. U.S. President number 15, James Buchanan. James Buchanan was the 15th President of the United States, serving from 1857 to 1861. He is often criticized for his inability to address slavery issues, which led to the secession of several southern states. Buchanan's presidency was marked by a series of crises, including the Dred Scott decision, the Lecompton Constitution, and John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. Despite his efforts to find a compromise, Buchanan's presidency ultimately ended in failure, paving the way for the Civil War. U.S. President number 16, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States, serving from 1861 to 1865. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest presidents in U.S. history. During his presidency, Lincoln led the country through the Civil War, ultimately abolishing slavery and preserving the Union. He also issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared freedom for all slaves in Confederate territory. Lincoln's leadership and commitment to equality have earned him a lasting place in American history. On April 14, 1865, Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater in Washington. Lincoln died the following morning at Peterson House. U.S. President number 17, Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson was the 17th President of the United States, serving from 1865 to 1869. He became president after Lincoln's assassination and oversaw Reconstruction. Johnson's presidency was marked by his efforts to readmit Southern states to the Union, which put him at odds with congressional Republicans. Despite his efforts to find a compromise, Johnson's presidency ultimately ended in impeachment, making him the first president in U.S. history to be impeached. U.S. President number 18, Ulysses S. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant was the 18th President of the United States, serving from 1869 to 1877. He is widely regarded as one of the most important presidents in U.S. history. During his presidency, Grant led the Union Army to victory in the Civil War and later signed the Civil Rights Act of 1875, which prohibited racial segregation in public facilities. Grant's leadership and commitment to equality have earned him a lasting place in American history. U.S. President number 19, Rutherford B. Hayes. Rutherford B. Hayes was the 19th President of the United States, serving from 1877 to 1881. His presidency was marked by the end of Reconstruction and the withdrawal of federal troops from the South. Hayes also oversaw the establishment of the first national park, Yellowstone National Park. Despite his efforts to find a compromise, Hayes' presidency ultimately ended in controversy, with many Democrats disputing the outcome of the 1876 presidential election. Hayes had announced in advance that he would serve only one term and retired to Spiegel Grove, his home in Fremont, Ohio, in 1881. U.S. President number 20, James A. Garfield. James A. Garfield was the 20th President of the United States, serving from 1881. His presidency was cut short by his assassination just 6 months into his term. For a few years after his assassination, Garfield's life story was seen as an exemplar of the American success story that even the poorest boy might someday become President of the United States. U.S. President number 21, Chester A. Arthur. Chester A. Arthur, the 21st President of the United States, served from 1881 to 1885. He was a Republican and took office after President James Garfield's assassination. Arthur is known for his extensive redecoration of the White House state floor. Arthur demonstrated as president that he was above factions within the Republican Party, if indeed not above the party itself. U.S. President number 22, Grover Cleveland, first term. Grover Cleveland, the 22nd president, served his first term from 1885 to 1889. He was a Democrat and is notable for being the only president at this time to serve non-consecutive terms. U.S. President number 23, Benjamin Harrison. Benjamin Harrison, the 23rd president, served from 1889 to 1893. A Republican, Harrison is the grandson of William Henry Harrison, the 9th president. U.S. President number 24, Grover Cleveland, second term. Grover Cleveland, the 24th president, served his second term from 1893 to 1897, again as a Democrat. Cleveland's second term was marked by significant economic challenges. U.S. President number 25, William McKinley. William McKinley, the 25th president, served from 1897 until his assassination in 1901. A Republican, McKinley's presidency was marked by significant foreign policy decisions, including the Spanish-American War. U.S. President number 26, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president, served from 1901 to 1909. A Republican, Roosevelt is known for his trust-busting policies and his emphasis on conservation. Roosevelt facilitated the construction of the Panama Canal by sending naval ships to support the Panamanians' independence movement. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for mediating the Russo-Japanese War, the first American president to receive this honor. U.S. President number 27, William Howard Taft. William Howard Taft, the 27th president, served from 1909 to 1913. A Republican, Taft's presidency was marked by a focus on domestic issues, including the 16th Amendment. Unlike Roosevelt, Taft did not believe in the stretching of presidential powers. Taft, free of the presidency, served as professor of law at Yale until President Harding made him Chief Justice of the United States in 1921, a position he held until just before his death in 1930. U.S. President number 28, Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, the 28th president, served from 1913 to 1921. A Democrat, Wilson's presidency was marked by significant foreign policy decisions, including the country's entry into World War I. After the Germans signed the armistice in November 1918, Wilson went to Paris to try to build an enduring peace. After leaving office, Wilson lived in Washington, D.C. until his death on February 3, 1924. U.S. President number 29, Warren G. Harding. Warren G. Harding, the 29th president, served from 1921 until his death in 1923. A Republican, Harding's presidency was cut short by scandal and his untimely death. In August 1923, he died in San Francisco. He suffered a fatal cardiovascular event, likely a heart attack. U.S. President number 30, Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge, the 30th president, served from 1923 to 1929. A Republican, Coolidge's presidency was marked by a focus on small government and laissez-faire economic policies. The political genius of President Coolidge, Walter Hittman pointed out in 1926, was his talent for efficiently doing nothing. By the time the disaster of the Great Depression hit the country, Coolidge was in retirement. U.S. President number 31, Herbert Hoover. The Great Depression hit just months into Hoover's presidency. He served from 1929 to 1933. He believed in limited government aid, which made him unpopular. Despite efforts, the economy worsened under his leadership. Hoover became the scapegoat for the Great Depression and was badly defeated by Governor Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1932. In the 1930s, he became a powerful critic of the New Deal, warning against tendency towards statism. U.S. President number 32, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt led America through the Depression and World War II. He served from 1933 to 1945. He launched the New Deal to revive the economy. Elected 4 times, he asserted in his first inaugural address that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. FDR died in 1945, early in his 4th term as president. The 22nd Amendment to limit presidential terms to 2 was passed by Congress in 1947 and ratified in 1951. Prior to the 22nd Amendment, serving only 2 terms was just a tradition begun by Washington, with no legal enforcement to limit the number of terms a president could be elected. U.S. President number 33, Harry S. Truman. Truman ended World War II by authorizing the atomic bomb. He served from 1945 to 1953. He later guided the country into the Cold War era and the Korean War. He became president when Roosevelt died. He told reporters, "I felt like the moon, the stars, and all the planets had fallen on me." U.S. President number 34, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Dwight D. Eisenhower, a World War II hero, he served from 1953 to 1961. He brought stability to post-war America. He focused on infrastructure and warned against the rise of military influence. In his farewell address, Eisenhower surprised many Americans by warning them to guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex, which he found a potential danger to American liberties. U.S. President number 35, John F. Kennedy. He served from 1961 to 1963. John F. Kennedy was known for his charisma and leadership during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He promoted civil rights, but was tragically assassinated in 1963. His inaugural address offered the memorable injunction, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Americans still remember his charm, wit, bravery, glamour, intelligence, and above all, the potential for future leadership of which the nation was denied. U.S. President number 36, Lyndon B. Johnson. He served from 1963 to 1969. Lyndon B. Johnson passed major civil rights laws and launched the Great Society programs. However, the Vietnam War overshadowed his achievements. He obtained enactment of measures President Kennedy had been urging at the time of his death, a major civil rights bill and a tax cut. Johnson enacted legislation augmenting federal aid to education and the creation of Medicare. U.S. President number 37, Richard Nixon. He served from 1969 to 1974. Nixon opened diplomatic ties with China and ended U.S. involvement in Vietnam, but his presidency ended in scandal with a Watergate resignation. Faced with what seemed almost certain impeachment, Nixon announced on August 8, 1974, that he would resign the next day to begin that process of healing which is so desperately needed in America. U.S. President number 38, Gerald Ford. He served from 1974 to 1977. Gerald Ford became president after Nixon resigned. Ford is remembered for pardoning Nixon and facing economic troubles. When Gerald R. Ford took the oath of office on August 9, 1974, he declared, "I assumed the presidency under extraordinary circumstances. This is an hour of history that troubles our minds and hurts our hearts." He told Americans, "Our long national nightmare is over." U.S. President number 39, Jimmy Carter. He served from 1977 to 1981. Carter focused on human rights and energy reform. His presidency was marred by inflation and the Iran hostage crisis. Americans suffered from brutal inflation and unemployment. The national frustration culminated with Carter's landslide defeat by Ronald Reagan in November 1980. U.S. President number 40, Ronald Reagan. He served from 1981 to 1989. Reagan championed conservative policies and revived the economy. He played a key role in ending the Cold War. Through Ronald Reagan's 8 years in office, the Cold War came to an end, the country seemed to regain its morale, and Americans enjoyed an extended economic boom. U.S. President number 41, George H.W. Bush. He served from 1989 to 1993. He led the U.S. during the Gulf War and saw the Soviet Union collapse. Economic recession hurt his re-election chances. U.S. President number 42, Bill Clinton. He served from 1993 to 2001. Clinton presided over strong economic growth and a budget surplus. His second term was rocked by impeachment over a personal scandal. During his 2 presidential terms, Bill Clinton presided over economic expansion and achieved the first budget surplus in decades. Unemployment, inflation, and the crime rate decreased during his administration. U.S. President number 43, George W. Bush. He served from 2001 to 2009. He faced the 9/11 attacks and launched wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. His presidency ended amid the 2008 financial crisis. George W. Bush became the second presidential son after John Quincy Adams to assume office. In 2007, the United States entered a deep recession caused by a subprime mortgage crisis and slowed growth. After Congress failed to pass a bill to provide support to banks, the stock market crashed on September 29, 2008, with the Dow Jones falling 777 points in one day. U.S. President number 44, Barack Obama. He served from 2009 to 2017. Obama was the first African-American president. He passed healthcare reform and helped recover the economy. During his first term, he signed 3 signature bills: economic stimulus, healthcare reform, and legislation reforming the nation's financial institutions. In 2009, Obama became the 4th president to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. In the last year of his second term, Obama spoke at 2 events that clearly moved him: the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights March from Selma to Montgomery and the dedication of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. "Our union is not yet perfect, but we are getting closer," he said in Selma. "And that's why we celebrate," he told those attending the museum opening in Washington, mindful that our work is not yet done. U.S. President number 45, Donald J. Trump, first term. He served his first term from 2017 to 2021. A businessman turned president, he signed a major tax reform bill into law and oversaw a reduction of federal regulations. His protectionist trade policies included tariffs in foreign aluminum, steel, and other products. In 2018, President Trump attended a summit with Kim Jong-un, marking the first time a sitting president met with a North Korean leader. The remainder of Trump's presidency was consumed by the coronavirus pandemic. Trump's term was marked by some division and controversy. He was impeached twice and lost re-election after a contested vote. He is the only president in American history to be impeached and acquitted twice by Congress. Trump lost re-election to Democrat candidate Joe Biden, but publicly claimed widespread voter fraud had affected the outcome. In 2024, he defeated Vice President Kamala Harris for his second term as president, winning 312 electoral votes and a plurality of the popular vote. U.S. President number 46, Joe Biden. He served from 2021 to 2025. Biden assumed office during the COVID-19 pandemic. He focused on unity, rebuilding alliances, and major infrastructure investments. In 2008, Barack Obama chose Joe Biden as his running mate. Biden served as Vice President of the United States from 2009 to 2017. As Vice President, he implemented the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, advised President Obama on key foreign policy decisions, led several initiatives to reduce violence against women, and initiated the Cancer Moonshot Program. Biden was the oldest person to take the oath of office, 78 at the time, the first president from Delaware, and the second Roman Catholic president in the United States history. The first was John F. Kennedy. During the campaign, Biden selected Kamala Harris as his running mate. Harris is the first woman, first African American, and first person of South Asia heritage to serve as Vice President of the United States.